You may think that I know too much, but no, it's never too much. Because I'm pushed.
Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey. I'm a brand designer, graphic designer, overall just creative person, and I'm so happy you're here. So today I'm going to be sharing one video within the series of graphic design tips and tricks, and this one's going to be all about fundamentals of design and just really the principles of design. I do want to share that I am not a professor of graphic design. I did go to school for it, and then I went on to have experiences at an advertising agency, creative studio, in-house, and then now freelance. I've gathered a little bit of an expertise in different areas, and I'm so happy to share it with you. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 6 different design principles. I'm going to cover each one, and then I'm also going to give a little bit of examples, but you can also research design principles on your own as well beyond this. As always, if you have any questions or you have a video that you would like to see me do, please comment it down below and consider subscribing. Okay, so let's get into it. These principles are going to help create an effective design and how appealing it is for your client, for their audience, for the user to really resonate with it. A lot of times the individual that will be viewing it, they might not know that they actively are seeing these elements, but in reality it's something you will feel if you're able to accomplish these. So it's just great to practice it and continue to improve upon it. First up, we have balance. Visual balance comes from arranging the elements so that no section is heavier than the other. Sometimes elements are thrown out of balance given an emphasis or a certain mood. I like to make sure there is balance in whether I'm doing a logo design, if I'm doing a social element, if I'm doing just different marketing materials on my website, things like that. You just want to be aware of balance. Balance can be displayed in a traditional fashion where if you cut it in half, that the other side is reflected on the look of the design, or it can just be done in a sense of arranging elements. I do want to go ahead and share a couple examples of what I mean by this. So first of all, in this client example, you can see that there's a whole variety of logos being used. Basically, there's balance found out in each of these with the KLB in the center and Kristen Binkley on each side, balancing on each end, and then the photography along the bottom. Again, you can see balance out here in a traditional sense with the leaves on each side of the KLB. Here you can see it in a less traditional sense with the Kristen Binkley on top and photography down below, and then also the lines on either side is a traditional way of doing it. I also want to share it in the example of an introduction deck I have. So here I have this welcome here page. Basically, I am balancing it out with having a image on one side and then I'm having text on the other side. That is really creating a strong sense of balance, as there's not just anything creating too much of empty space, white space, as the content of the image is very large and then the text is very large as well. So they feel rather balanced even though the text isn't taking up a complete area from top to bottom, side to side, like the images. Next up, we have proximity/unity. So the relationship between different elements in a design is affected by the proximity. How close or how far apart elements are suggests the relationship or the lack of relationship that is displayed there. And then unity can be created by using a third element to connect distant parts. So a couple things to consider are the title elements together. Is contact information all together? Are there related elements together? And design proximity or closeness creates a bond or a link. Personally, proximity and unity is just a great way to show how the logo should be displayed. I mean, obviously in the elements I just shared, there are many different elements within one logo design that makes sure that there is a unity within that. I would also say that it helps to make sure that there is a clear space around your elements and that there aren't too many graphic components together. Proximity and unity is really important when it comes to logo, when it comes to package design, when it comes to social templates and websites. And a few different aspects I like to focus on it is when you're looking at type. This could be between the leading and kerning and also the line height of an area. Going back to our previous example, you can see that the line height here is well apart and then also separates within the paragraph to make it easy on an individual's eyes to be reading that. These also, my design solutions with having the different elements with the brand design separated between the lines with another element really helps create those 3 different pillars as well. Looking at it from a logo perspective, you can see that these all are cohesive in proximity and closeness without being on top of each other, as they feel like there is a good amount of space around them with still being held as one cohesive piece. You can also see it down below in this story template that I have created for her. So basically there is still separation in each of these individual clothing pieces, and then with the type as well, with keeping their space to keep room around the type choices. Overall, proximity and unity is just really important when it comes to your design, as an individual will see this and they will feel it, whether you realize it or not. For the 3rd design principle, we have alignment. So alignment brings order to the design. How type and graphics are aligned on a page and in relation to each other makes the layout easier or more difficult to read. This also is taken into consideration as if has a grid been used when you're creating your logo designs. Is there a common alignment that's being used? Is it right aligned, left aligned, centered? Does alignment read any readability to it, or has it be done with a specific goal in mind? So going back to our example here, you can see that the alignment is clear on this logo element that we were just discussing. You can see that the alignment is clear on this logo element that we were just discussing with that portion of the proximity and unity. But you can also see that throughout here, when there is a paragraph being used, I am right aligning it. And you can see that also throughout my brand introduction deck. This is because when you're reading, you want to make sure that your eyes are not being tired, that your consumer's eyes aren't being tired out. And so it's best to follow the regular practice of reading from left to right. And again, if there are multiple paragraphs, this is extremely important. I know how tempting it can be to want to center align your text, but that really only works when it's on about one line. There may be some rare occasions that center alignment could work in other ways, and that would be playing with hierarchy and text sizes and important levels to speak to that. But for the most case, it's best practice to keep it right left aligned. Okay, and then also just touching base on this client guidebook that I created for my client, you can see that in this case, we did right align an aspect with the family session in the prep guide, but that worked because we were again looking at that element of the different hierarchy and sizes and in type choices. You might also notice that this KLB line is directly below to line up with the family session and prep guide, so that's automatically creating that alignment as well. For this next page, you can also see that I am creating an aspect of reading from left to right, and the hierarchy from the welcome being on the very left side being shorter, then the let's make some magic together goes across to the right, so your eye gradually is going down diagonally, and it finishes with this large sign off on her name with the diagonal aspect. In the content section, you can see that the elements of the different pages are left aligned no matter how long the length is. And then the same with the color palettes. You can see that everything is left aligned no matter if it's on the first half of the page or the second half. Up next, we have repetition and consistency. So repeating design elements and consistency of styles shows a reader where to go and helps them navigate the design. So things to ask are, do the page numbers and stay in the same place from page to page? Are the headlines consistent in size, style, placement? Is the style consistent throughout? I am constantly preaching this. That's why I love to share style guides, and I love to help clients create that, because having a style guide will lay out all those different factors of having the different type choices that you'll be using, having your color selections from primary to secondary, having different patterns developed to use throughout, and having general use of templates to guide you. So basically, I would really recommend to get comfortable with that. I know it's tempting to constantly want to switch it up for yourself, but your audience will establish trust with you if you stay consistent with your look and feel and with your same tones. It's about the emotion that you want to be evoking with your clients. So for this example here, of course, I've just been displaying the style guide the whole entire time for reference. And basically what you can see is there is a clear aspect of colors being used throughout this guide. We have her primary selections, her secondary selections, then we have different type choices, so what she'll be using on her header and within her logo, her subhead type choice, and then her paragraph type choice. And then we also have a few different patterns that were created just for her. And those are, again, using her colors, and then we flush them out throughout her different social elements as well. Even looking at this social grid, you can see that everything fits really well together, especially with her photography aspects that she's already established and created for her client with that look. And they're not all exact the same. You still have the different factors with them, but at the end of the day, they have different elements but keep a cohesive look. So consistency is really clear. You can always do a rebrand later on. You can extend your brand to create additional rules, but having a start with having colors that you move forward with a certain brand and type choices is a great way to look at it. The fifth design principle is contrast. In design, big and small elements, black and white text, and graphics all create different contrast with your elements. Contrast helps different elements to stand out. It creates the hierarchy on the different levels of your design. A few questions to ask are, does the design have enough contrast? Is there enough contrast between text and background for it to stand out, for it to be readable? Are the more important elements, headlines, calls to action contrasting enough to stand out? Once again, referencing this client guide that I created, you can see that the welcome is larger in text and let's make some magic together are larger in text to help stand out and draw your reader in. You can also see it here within the say yes and say no elements, as those are the titles, and that will draw the eyes in into reading that. Within the social templates, you can see for the now booking one that the now booking being circled even creates a different factor within there. And then the October, November, again, is the largest, most important element. So that is large, right in center. And then book a free call, link in bio is also large and finishes off the call to action. If we're looking at my website, you can see that I have this element right at the top that says strategic brand design for the small business owner with big dreams to draw my reader in. And then the contact me is a nice big button with a different color contrast to create that draw of attention. Again, you can see within my design solutions, I have these different shape elements at the top to create a separation within the text and draw to each individual pillar there. Last but not least, we have white space. Designs that cram too much into a small space are uncomfortable and may be confusing and difficult to read. White space gives the design breathing space. Is there enough between columns of text? Does text sit clear of the graphics? Are you aware of how much white space is in between the elements? Is there anything that is floating? Overall, white space kind of ties in with the proximity and unity that we were touching base on. Basically, you don't want anything to crowd the area too much, but you also don't want it to seem forgotten. One aspect that I automatically think of is if you have a paragraph and there is one word that decides to follow along on the bottom, that just seems out of place and shouldn't be there. So that's one simple way to look at it. You can simply move an additional one along to the bottom so there's two words, or just having the one. Looking back at an example of the client guide book, you can see within these different section developments, there are titles and there's quite a bit of room below. You can see within this example of the client guidebook again that there's quite a bit of space above this after section. So basically there is still a good amount of room, but in reality it is feeling balanced out, working with that aspect as it's just heavier along the bottom with the image being used. There's also just different elements above the after that creates for a focus on after, and you don't need anything else. It's really purposeful on after your family session and the image all being one cohesive section to be looking at. Looking at the after the session details, you can see that there's white space in between the sneak peek and the big reveal, just really to break up those 3 different paragraphs and create a space for your eyes to follow down below it. Lastly, you can see in this Get in Touch section that the emphasis is in the center and there is white space all around it, but with having the pattern in the background, you are not noticing it being empty. Those elements are filling it there. I also just wanted to add that on the introduction or the client guide page cover, they always have just the logo on there, and that is purposeful to create contrast and to create a lot of definition within that. It also adds just like more of a dramatic effect to it, which I think is great when you're thinking about white space. So that's all I have for you on the 6 different elements. As you can see, these are really important, and it's just something that you need to practice with. Good design is something I'm constantly practicing. A lot of this I did have a great article to reference, so I'm going to link it down below as well. They were things that I had read and I definitely found applicable in when I was thinking about the fundamentals that I learned within design school and what I use every single day as I'm creating various design elements. I also wanted to say that having a great desk space is really important too, having a great setup for creating good design. I'm really lucky because I just received some new items for my desk space from Grove Made, and so I have this awesome new laptop holder, I have a brand new mouse pad, and I have this element for my iPad, and so this has all been really helpful, and if you're interested in any of that as well, I'll link them down below, so they'd be a great resource for you to look at. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, drop them down below. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing, and always please like this video because it really helps myself know if you are liking it or not. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.
By my side.